In 2011, a man walked into a police station and calmly confessed to a murder committed 16 years earlier. It's hard to believe, but the victim was his own 15-year-old stepsister, a girl who had vanished one chilly autumn morning in 1995. This case was one of the most sensational in the entire history of the Netherlands, and it was suddenly revealed that it was the brother who had committed the murder. How could the police have missed it? The plot twists in this case turned out to be even more dramatic than those in any detective novel. During the initial interrogations, the shocking truth quickly emerged. It turned out that the young man was not the murderer. But why would he confess to something that he did not do? At first glance, the detectives thought the solution was obvious. During questioning, the young man quickly accused their father of murdering his stepsister. Yet, even here, things were not so simple. The investigators also quickly discovered that the young man's father was not guilty either. What on earth happened in this family? And how, in the end, did these seemingly illogical actions by the young man lead to the solving of a crime that even the best detectives in the Netherlands had been unable to crack for more than 15 years? This is the story of the disappearance of Nicole van den Hurk, a case that could be easily made into a Hollywood movie. Welcome to Unexpected Twists. Here, even the most seemingly simple story is worth a top-tier Hollywood adaptation, so stick around till the end and subscribe. To understand how things came to such a desperate turn, we need to go back to the beginning of Nicole's story. The story begins with the couple Angelica Tichtmeijer and Ed van den Hurk, who first crossed paths in 1978. By then, Ed, already divorced once, had a 2-year-old son named Andy from a previous marriage. Little is known of Angelica's background, but Ed was a well-known singer in the Netherlands. By 1980, he and Angelica were ready to tie the knot. That same year, the couple welcomed a baby girl, Nicole. A year later, Angelica admitted to Ed that he was not the child's biological father. Nevertheless, Ed adopted Nicole. In 1988, Ed and Angelica went their separate ways. Because Angelica struggled with mental health issues, Ed, despite not being Nicole's biological father, petitioned the court for custody after the divorce. The judge sided with Ed, leaving Nicole to live with her stepfather and stepbrother. She still visited her mother regularly, but Angelica's condition continued to deteriorate. In 1995, Ed married for the third time. This time to a woman named Jolanta. Unable to come to terms with Ed's new marriage, Angelica took her own life. Naturally, Nicole was devastated. During this dark period, she drew particular strength from her half-brother, Andy. This is where the most critical part of the story begins. By 1995, Nicole was 15, still in school and working part-time at a Conmar grocery store bakery. October 6, 1995 started out like any other day. After school, Nicole went to her grandmother's house, as usual, to get ready for work. She grabbed her keys and her purse, then rode her bicycle to the bakery. From her employer's perspective, Nicole was always punctual, never late for a shift, but on that day, something was off. 15 minutes into her scheduled start, Nicole still hadn't arrived. The bakery owner called Nicole's home, and they believed she was already at work. Alarmed, Ed, Nicole's stepfather, phoned the authorities. Police questioned possible witnesses, but no one had spotted a girl matching Nicole's description. An hour into the search, they made a key discovery. Nicole's bicycle was found abandoned on the banks of the Demel River. This did not bode well. There were no traces of Nicole anywhere else, so divers began scouring the river's murky depths. Thankfully, she was nowhere to be found. But the police, at a loss for leads, had no clue where else to look. Hoping to uncover something, anything, detectives questioned Nicole's family and friends. They learned that Nicole's biological father lived in Germany and her mother had died not long before. Some investigators speculated Nicole had run away to be with her birth father. However, he strongly denied that she had come to stay with him, and over the next 2 weeks, the search for Nicole produced no tangible results. Her family clings to the hope that she might still be found alive. Then, on October 19th, Nearly 2 weeks after Nicole vanished, another breakthrough occurred. A passerby discovered a small backpack near the Eindhoven Canal. It was muddy and wet, but unmistakably Nicole's. Inside were some of her belongings, confirming it was hers. This new clue deepened the mystery. Someone discarded Nicole's things miles away from where her bike was found. It was as if someone wanted to erase her trail entirely. The question of what happened to Nicole grew darker and more urgent. Leads were scarce. Each one that surfaced was shrouded in uncertainty. Rumors swirled around town. Everybody had a theory, but nothing solid. In a strange twist, a woman detained for unrelated charges in another country came forward with a bizarre tip. She claimed to know who killed Nicole, alleging the dangerous men she had been involved with might have targeted the teen. For a moment, investigators wondered if this could be the break they needed. Nicole's family, grasping for any hope, listened intently. Nicole's stepfather even lent credence to the woman's story at first, desperate for any answers. But as detectives checked out the details, the lead fell apart. The woman's story was inconsistent and unsupported by any evidence. It became clear she had no real connection to Nicole's case. It was another dead end, a cruel tease in a case growing colder by the day. Weeks turned into months. The trees along the Dormel River shed their leaves as autumn deepened, and still there was no sign of Nicole. Then, on November 22nd, 1995, a full 7 weeks since she disappeared, a grim discovery finally brought the search to a close. In a wooded area on the outskirts of town between Mierlo and Lierop, a passerby stumbled upon something no one wanted to find. At first, it looked like a bundle of discarded clothing among the fallen leaves, but as daylight slanted through the trees, the horrifying reality became clear. It was Nicole. Her body lay hidden in the brush, lifeless and alone under the open sky. In that instant, hope shattered for her family. The missing persons case had become a murder case. Nicole's body was taken for examination, and forensic details painted a heartbreaking picture of her final moments. It was determined she had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. The likely cause of death was internal bleeding from a deep stab wound. The brutality of the crime shocked even veteran investigators. A 15-year-old girl on her way to work had been attacked, violated, and left in the woods as if her life meant nothing. The people of Eindhoven had prayed to find Nicole safe. Now, they grappled with rage and grief. For the police, one challenge ended only to give rise to another. They now had a murderer to catch. Who could have done something so heinous? The pressure to get answers and justice was immense. In the days following the discovery of Nicole's body, the investigation kicked into high gear. Detectives reconstructed Nicole's last known movements, interviewing anyone who might have seen her that morning. They looked into her friends, acquaintances, and any strangers reported in the area. Suspicion inevitably turned toward the closest to Nicole. Not because of evidence, but because in many cases like this, the perpetrator is someone the victim knew. It was a painful reality, but the police had to consider it. Nicole's grieving family members now found themselves facing tough questions, even as they mourned. In May 1996, frustration drove investigators to take drastic steps. In a stunning move, Andy van der Hurk, the very brother who had pleaded for Nicole's return, was arrested. Police held the 18-year-old in custody for days, looking for anything that might link him to his stepsister's murder. They found nothing. Andy was released without charges, adamant that he had nothing to do with Nicole's death. Next, officers detained Nicole's stepfather, Ed, hoping for a breakthrough. Again, no evidence tied him to the crime, and he too was let go after a few days. These interrogations left the family even more shattered. The real killer, it seemed, was still out there, unidentified and roaming free. The case of Nicole van der Hurk then stalled. Every promising lead had led to a dead end. The false tip from the overseas witness went nowhere, and investigating Nicole's family only wrought more heartache. The community, once united in the search, was left frightened and frustrated. A killer had walked free among them for months, and now years began to pass with no answers. Police continued to ask the public for help and even offered a substantial reward for information, but nothing broke. As time marched on, the number of detectives assigned to Nicole's case dwindled. By 2004, a cold case team briefly re-examined the evidence, but they too found no new leads. For years, Nicole's case remained ice cold, but Andy could not move on. One unsettling idea kept him awake at night: the fear that Nicole's killer might have been his own father, Ed Vandenhurk, Nicole's stepfather. Imagine the torment of that suspicion, yet Andy couldn't shake it. He eventually moved to England to build a new life, but even there, the question of who killed his sister followed him. By 2011, after 16 years of frustration, Andy reached a breaking point. He made a drastic plan to force the truth into the light, a plan that could either unmask the real killer or ruin his own life. On March 8, 2011, Andy Vandenhurk acted on his plan. He posted a shocking confession on Facebook. He claimed that he murdered his own sister. "I will be arrested today for the murder of my sister," he wrote, sending a jolt through everyone who read it. After all this time, could it be true? Dutch and British authorities certainly could not ignore it, and he was promptly arrested in England and extradited to the Netherlands. The public was stunned. 16 years after Nicole's disappearance, her brother, once the face of a grieving family, was now in handcuffs, accused of being her killer. Back in Dutch custody, Andy stuck to his story at first, claiming he killed Nicole. Investigators pressed him for details. Where did it happen? How? Why? His answers were vague and contradictory. Beyond his own words, there was nothing linking Andy to the crime. No physical evidence, no witnesses, nothing. After 5 days of intense questioning and no breakthrough, the authorities began to suspect that Andy's confession was a lie. Finally, Andy admitted the truth. He did not kill his sister. He revealed that he had never hurt her at all. Upon his release, Andy revealed the actual perpetrator behind Nicole's demise: their father, Ed. The young man confessed that Ed had committed the act to conceal a disturbing secret. According to Andy, following the passing of Nicole's mother, Ed, her stepfather, had sexually assaulted her. Somehow, Ed managed to persuade Nicole to remain silent. However, this act resulted in an unintended pregnancy. Fearing that a 15-year-old giving birth would expose his crime, he took her life. Naturally, the stepfather denied these accusations, yet it raised eyebrows to hear such allegations from a son against his father without any basis. Seeking the truth, authorities exhumed Nicole's body for advanced forensic analysis. The results were startling. Nicole's remains contained sperm DNA from 2 individuals. One was her boyfriend, an expected finding. The second individual's identity remained unknown, excluding both Andy and Ed. Speculation arose that this unknown person was the actual murderer. However, questions lingered regarding Andy's initial confession and subsequent accusations against his father. In an interview, Andy clarified his motives. He believed his sister's case warranted a fresh look. Given the technological advancements since her death 16 years prior, he hoped that a renewed examination would yield crucial evidence. His confessions were a ploy to prompt authorities to reopen the investigation. He even fabricated accusations against his father, knowing Ed was innocent, to force the reinvestigation. When the investigators ran the second DNA sample through the national database, they finally got a match. In early 2014, nearly 19 years after Nicole's murder, the DNA was matched to a man already in the system, a 46-year-old named Jos de G. Jos de G was no stranger to law enforcement. He had a history of violence and was previously convicted of rape. In fact, by 2014, he was residing in a secure psychiatric facility, serving time for other offenses. The revelation that his DNA was found on Nicole Vandenhurk's body electrified the investigation. At long last, they had a name and a face potentially linked to the crime. In January 2014, Dutch police formally arrested Jos de G on suspicion of raping and murdering Nicole. After 2 decades of mystery, someone was finally in custody who might truly be responsible for what happened that October morning in 1995. By 2015, Jos de G faced trial in a Dutch courtroom. The public watched, anxious for a resolution in the case that had haunted them for years. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence and Yos's criminal history to paint him as the man who attacked and killed Nicole. But Yos G maintained his innocence, and his defense team worked relentlessly to create doubt. Yes, his DNA was on Nicole, but his lawyers argued that that did not prove that he murdered her. They floated alternative explanations. Perhaps they insinuated Yos and Nicole had crossed paths and had a consensual encounter that left DNA, and someone else might have killed her later. The defense pointed to the presence of Nicole's boyfriend's DNA, and that tiny trace of an unknown male in the samples. They claimed this suggested there could have been another man involved, or that the evidence could have been contaminated. Their goal was clear. If they couldn't prove Yos didn't rape Nicole, they at least wanted to convince the court that there was no certainty he committed the fatal violence. Forensic experts countered the defense's theories, explaining that the chances of Yos's DNA being on Nicole by accident was virtually zero. They testified that the unknown DNA was a minor trace, possibly a discarded artifact, and not necessarily evidence of a second attacker. The prosecution argued that Yos G's past actions showed a pattern. He was exactly the kind of predator who would assault a girl like Nicole. Still, without a direct confession or eyewitness, some uncertainty remained. Nicole could not tell her side of the story, and Yos G, firmly denying he harmed her, offered nothing. Nicole's family endured the trial with white knuckles, hearing the brutal details of her final moments laid out in court, while the man they believed responsible insisted on his innocence. Finally, after lengthy proceedings, the court delivered a verdict in November 2016. The judges found Yos G guilty, but only of part of the crime. He was convicted of raping Nicole Hurk. However, to the dismay of Nicole's family, the court ruled that there was not enough evidence to convict him of her murder. In the judge's view, it could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Yos was the one who stabbed Nicole, partly because of that lingering sliver of unknown DNA suggesting another possible person. The courtroom erupted in emotion. Yos G was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the rape, a punishment far lighter than what Nicole's loved ones had hoped for. After 21 long years, the result felt painfully incomplete. Nicole's family was left with the sense that their fight for full justice wasn't over. Both the prosecution and the defense appealed the decision. Neither side was satisfied. Nicole's family braced for another legal battle, determined to see the man they believed killed her fully held accountable. In October 2018, a panel of appellate judges issued a new ruling. This time, they found Yos G guilty of manslaughter in addition to the rape. The Court of Appeal concluded that the totality of evidence pointed to Yos G as the person who assaulted and caused Nicole's death, even if it wasn't premeditated murder. His sentence was raised to 12 years in prison. It wasn't a huge sentence for a life taken, but it was a confirmation that, at last, someone was officially held responsible for Nicole's killing. A measure of justice was finally achieved more than 2 decades after the crime. For Andy Hurk, the conclusion of the legal battle brought little peace. He had sacrificed so much to find his sister's killer, and when it was finally over, the weight of those years took a heavy toll. In 2021, overwhelmed by trauma and grief, Andy tragically took his own life. It was a heartbreaking postscript for Nicole's story. The brother who helped solve his sister's case, but could not escape its shadow. If you enjoy such cases with unexpected twists, check out the channel. There you're going to find many great stories. If you like what you see, please subscribe. I'd be very grateful. I'll catch you next time.